All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another week of the one and only MMFM Digital. I'm your host, J.O. Martinez. As always, I want to thank our sponsors, the Miami Media and Film Market, and of course, Camacol, the Latin Chamber, as well as my good partner, Patty Arias, and president of Camacol, Joe Chi, doing some great work in the community, keeping the industry going during this extraordinarily crazy time. I was just telling my guests, I hope that we can get out of this sort of COVID jail soon. Get us on parole somehow. So let's see what the cards have in store. But we have a great guest today. He's a good friend, a colleague, filmmaker here in the community, doing some great work across multiple platforms. He's an Emmy-winning editor. He's a writer, director, producer. He's done shorts. He's done feature films. He's done web content. He may have even done some infomercials, tons of music videos, really big stars. And he is just one of the nicest, coolest, most talented filmmakers we have coming out of the 305. So very excited to talk to our guest today, Jokes Yanis. But right before we bring him on, of course, we always have to share a little bit of industry news. So what's going on in the trades this week? Hugh Jackman was recently on a talk show where he announced that he would be gifting his good friend Ryan Reynolds with a flaming bag of dog poo. I'm not sure what that present has to do with their relationship, but in similar celebrity news, I hear that they're going to be hiring Adam Sandler as a new editor-in-chief of The Hollywood Reporter. We need to do a lot more stories involving the dog poo. Forget about the streaming wars. That's nonsense. We need flaming poo. That's what people want to read. Anyway, that's my joke for today. And speaking of jokes, here's the one and only Jokes Yanis. That was probably the best segue that I've done so far. How are you, Jokes?
Good.
So just give me an audio test here. Just want to make sure we can hear you okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me at all or no?
No, we're good. So, Jokes, I told the folks a little bit, obviously you're from the 305, but, let's just kind of take a step back. Were you born and raised in Miami?
I was, yes. Yeah, I definitely was born and raised in Miami. I was born in Jackson Hospital, the whole nine.
Oh, nice. So you are our 305 lifer.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I might not always live here, but I definitely would be buried here.
Absolutely. Yes. A nice, warm, sunny place.
Totally.
But so tell me a little bit more in terms of, growing up in Miami and, how did that kind of early on, at what point, here in South Florida, did you start to find a passion for the industry and think that you may have a creative career ahead of you?
In reality, when I first got into kind of the business, it was more through music. So I used to work on music and I was making beats and I was going to Miami-Dade, like learning music business. I used to also write songs and I was more actually into the music side of things. I did early on when I was like an early teenager, like 13 or 14, me and my friends made a bunch of movies, but we always thought like Hollywood seemed like something super far away and something that we could never like even get close to. We really did it just for us and our friends.
Right.
This was like pre-internet era, so like we weren't like, even thinking about that. We would just pass around literally a VHS and have like little mini like little parties where we'd show it on a TV at a house, on a VHS. So it wasn't until I was more involved in the music business and in college that I started kind of falling out of love with the music business because I wasn't really liking the way that it kind of worked and was structured. I guess I was also kind of seeing the writing on the wall of the whole downloading and streaming and all this kind of stuff, and I was kind of like, whoa, like this is like a odd business. I don't know if I really want to be so involved in it that way. But I did always write, and I was always somebody who was into writing. So I was like, you know what? I want to take a screenwriting class, and I happened to have it at Dade. And then in order to take the screenwriting class, I had to take this other prerequisite class, and they kind of suckered me into it, the whole thing. But like I was a fish in water once I got there.
Wow. That's very interesting to know, and how you kind of came up to the music side. And obviously we'll get into some of the great music videos that you've worked on. But, considering your nickname Jokes, I thought maybe you came up doing stand-up or something. So when did Jokes come along?
Jokes is actually like a graffiti tag name that I had. Like I used to have another tag name called that was Cams. That I used. That was the one I primarily used. And then at the very tail end of graffiti, like around when I was like 17, I switched it over to Jokes just as kind of like a joke, just kind of like oh, let me try that. And then all my friends, it stuck with them. So they started calling me that, even though I really wasn't using that name for a lot of graffiti writing. Because when I was around 18 or 19, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this graffiti shit. Like, not like at least going out and doing it illegally and all that stuff like that. I would still do it on paper. I can still do it right now. You
Right.
know what I mean? But like doing it up on walls, doing the murals, I was like, I'll let the guys who were like really, really good at that stuff handle that. You know what I mean? Like I had a different calling. I wanted to like, expand my horizons as far as being an artist is concerned.
Absolutely. So when you get out of, you make sort of this transition, you get out of Dade. What's your sort of first break into the industry?
Um, I got hired freelance to do a music video. Well, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit because that wouldn't be the first chance. So when I was in school, actually, um, this guy from the group called the Icons. If we're gonna take it back to like some old school Florida classics, there was a group called Icons that had this big hit song called "Get Crunked Up." I don't know if you remember that song from back in the days.
I
The early.
do.
Okay, so one of the guys that was in that group that was on that big song, he had came to me and wanted me to write a screenplay and hired me to write a screenplay for him.
Oh, wow.
So I did the screenplay, and then after I did the screenplay, he's like, "Oh, I want to make the movie, but I only have this much money and blah blah blah." So he bought me a camera and a bunch of like little things that I needed in order to upgrade an editing machine that I had made at my house. That was like really hard to get back then,
Sure.
and I was like grinding my ass off to get that. So then I ended up, because of that job, kind of acquiring a camera and a bunch of like little pieces of gear that I needed so that I can kind of work on my own.
Hmm.
And that project, I finished it, and then I ended up just going back to like a regular job, which sucked. And then at one point, after doing stuff like on the weekends and like playing around, but I have my gear now. You know what I mean? Like I can do my own thing now. I shot a bunch of like little experimental pieces and little things that I wanted to do just to kind of make a reel. That wasn't just film school stuff, because film school stuff was like old reversal film, 60 millimeter, all on film.
She
And
stopped the
on that
school.
project that I
No,
did,
I didn't.
I had
I did not stop.
I'd
I
actually
said
learned
stop.
before 24p was on video. So before 24p video, the way to do 24p was to create a 24p timeline, shoot a 30p, drop it on there, and make sure you cut before the shit went off sync. So I was doing that for a while. Oh, I can't hear you right now. I think you're like on mute.
Yeah, I was saying it's a much more complicated process back in
It
the
was
day.
super, but nobody really was seeing 24p video too often. So when you saw that, you were like, "Oh my god, that looks like film."
Right.
So at one point, I ended up meeting up with this company, and they were like, "You shot that?" And I was like, "Yeah." "What'd you shoot that with?" "Oh, I shot it with a Canon XO1." They're like, "You did that with a Canon XO1?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, we're gonna hire you to shoot a music video."
Wow. Okay. And so what was that first video that you jumped on?
I shot on this Mexican, like ranchero music kind of video,
Okay.
but it was like almost completely narrative. It was about a guy who loses a girl, and I kind of used like I borrowed some ideas from something about Mary, where the band was up in a tree, or like odd places or whatever. And it came out really cool, and they were really happy with it. And then that company hired me to do a TV show called Upbeat, which then that show Upbeat became like the #1 show on that channel Mundos.
Oh, wow. And so that was like your entree through the Spanish media world, essentially.
Correct. Well, my show was in English though, because since I did the English content, I was doing more hip hop and dance music. That was like what my show covered. I had a mix of English and Spanish, so I was I had this like kind of like loophole where my show would be in English, even though it was on a technically Spanish channel. That was until NBC bought them and they changed the channel into a completely bilingual channel. Yeah, I can't hear you again.
Sorry. Yeah, it's my mic. I gotta get a couple of adjustments here. Sorry. So okay, so you're making your way through this Latin sort of Spanish world, doing some cool music videos. When did you
Right.
decide, that you wanted to get into more narrative stuff, like short films and indies and that kind of thing?
Well, I was into wanting to do that from when I was in college. I had no when I was going to film school at Dade. I had no interest realistically in music videos. I didn't even care about music videos really, other than music videos videos more as like I always saw music videos kind of as commercials at that point, and I wasn't really into that world at all. I didn't even know how really music videos even worked at that point.
Right.
I didn't know if it was the artist that gave them the idea, if it was a director, a writer. I had no clue realistically. It wasn't until I did that show for a while, and even though I did that other music video, which was all my idea or whatever, it wasn't until I did that show that I was actually programming a lot of music videos that I kind of really learned how music videos are supposed to be done.
Right.
And then I started doing a couple videos and they became kind of like, I actually caught luck and I did this Don Dinero Pana Pana video, which was like the first video that I thought that I did that I was like, oh, this came out badass.
Right.
Like, I killed it on this. And then that video happened to go #1 in the tropical charts.
Right. No, that makes sense. And meanwhile, you're just kind of honing your craft and just, through each project, each video, just kind of like, getting sort of your ground as a filmmaker, as an artist.
Totally, yeah. And then that show, and plus that happening kind of all at the same time, just had this like great momentum. And then that show, when NBC bought Telemundo, we created the show called The Roof, which I was the creative director of. And I wrote the pilot for it. I did I basically did all the creative work on that show. I didn't come up with the name for it or the format, because that was a format that was like, here's a 2-hour live show. What can you do with that? And they said, and call it The Roof because we want to build a roof set. And I was like, awesome, I could do that. And then I like the format, what's going to happen here, what's going to go on there. I'd never even done that before. So I was kind of just doing it like how I wish one of those shows would be.
Right.
So that was that process in television. But I always was like my true love. And I was just doing that to work and make money and be in the industry because I saw there was no other options realistically.
Right.
Like I said, this is like kind of pre-internet era. Internet was around, but video on the internet was like, there was barely MySpace.
Right.
This time. So it wasn't until, and then I ended up leaving the show at one point because I wanted to leave when it was on top. And when the show kind of reached the pinnacle of its like highest ratings, I was like, I don't think they need me anymore. I'm out. I'm good. And also, I just recently did like a TV documentary, kind of like sharpening up my tools as far as like narrative work. And then I left there and just started doing music videos. And and then, like literally, it was like from like because I knew a lot of the Spanish labels for the TV show. I had my book in there. And then after a while, it was just like, oh, this music video business is doing great. This is an era also where music videos had nice budgets.
Right.
And after I think about, I don't know, maybe like 20 Spanish music videos, I like completely went into the English world of music videos as well.
Okay.
And I was kind of playing in both worlds. And I would say that until like about 2008. And then 2008, I kind of, like that's when the market crashed as well as the housing. It kind of really happened in 2007 in music.
Right.
It started happening where the budgets for music videos just started drying up and they were like moving over to the DSLR era of music videos. And I didn't want to go backwards. I had just started shooting on film, just started shooting $100,000 videos, just started doing like the bigger budget stuff. Now the market had crashed. I was like, well, either I dedicate myself completely to music videos or I go to what I really want to do, which is the narrative. So then that's when I moved over and I became an editor. Because while I was, even though I was professionally, so I ended up working that was broadcasting, and I started editing that show, and then we ended up winning like 12 Emmys for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. And so
we're
going to jump ahead a little bit to that, first sort of breakout short that you did, which was Vladimir's Vodka. And talk a little bit about that short, and then obviously your sort of ongoing creative relationship with Jay Bishop, your sort of muse and co-writer.
Correct. So me and Jay Bishop, I've known him since we were like 12 years old. Like he used to act in these little movies that we used to do when we were kids, and me and him would like my other buddy Gabe. He would shoot them. He would work the camera and edit them on like VCR to VCR. I would help and him come up with the stories that we would do, and I would act them as well, and all that kind of stuff like that. So even in film school, like the film I made, he was a star of it. So we always kind of worked together. And then even when the roof came around, I put him on the roof. I got him a job on there. I mean, he got the job himself. He closed the deal, but I
Right.
brought him. I mean, I was like, "Yo, check this guy out." He was like the only white guy on that show. So when I finished Gabriel, I was more into going, okay, we're in a new era now. I need to make a short film that kind of reboots like everything I've been learning narrative wise. Because just to backtrack a little bit, throughout the whole time that I was doing the TV show The Roof and doing all these music videos, I was educating myself on screenplay work because that's kind of where I have like the most amount of passion for. And like I mean, I still do it to this day. It's still like one of my hobbies. Like I'm a film script nerd. Like I read all the books, I go to seminars. If there's like a technique of doing it, I want to know about it. I want to learn about it. Whether I adopt it or use it or not, that's a whole different story. But I'm constantly trying to absorb, screenplays and like playing with format and understanding that whole thing. So after I did the show Gabrielle, I went and like pretty much right before I won the Emmy for the show, because we won the Emmy like a year after we were pretty much done with the show. I went into going, because I made a pretty good amount of money on that show. I was good about saving my money, so I saved a little bit of money. I showed the script off. We dedicated ourselves to write a script. Me and Jay Bishop wrote the script, and we started showing the script off. We got a couple of friends that came in and put some money into it as well, and then we shot that short film, kind of as a precursor, because me and Jay had written Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, the first draft of that feature film.
Right.
So we wanted to show, because that character, when I showed that original script off to a few people, they were like, "Oh, is that Vladimir character you talk with a Russian accent or this and that?" And I'm like, no, you don't understand. He's an American. Like, no. So they're like, they didn't really understand that character, so I wanted them to like understand this like valet grifter, Miami homeboy who happens to be from Russian descent.
Right. So it was almost like a proof of concept for the feature.
100%.
That's awesome. So then obviously, and we can get into that feature, and then we'll talk about a little bit more about your current projects and future projects. But Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo was a feature, came out around 2013. Full disclosure, I was involved in that film as well. It was a great run, a great adventure. But talk a little bit about how that project came together and shooting that here in Miami, and then sort of the trajectory that took.
So that project began because I had won that Emmy for editing. I kept getting booked I started editing features basically, and I edited Magic City Memoirs, and then after Magic City Memoirs, that led me into editing this other film called If Only for this guy Jorge Hernando. So while we were editing that film, and while we were making that film, because I was actually editing it while we were shooting, and he saw and I was like really helping him a lot as far as giving him like, hey, look, you're missing this in this scene. You need this. Hey, this actor's not really giving you their best performance. Why don't you try this? And I was doing this like totally like the way I think you should do stuff like that, which is you take that person to the side. You don't do it in front of everybody doing some ego bullshit. Because at the end of the day, I don't care about that. Like, it's not, this guy's paying for the movie. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason to do that. I would just take him to the side and be like, hey, listen to this, and just giving him good, healthy advice. Whether he took it all the time or not, that was on him. But he would keep coming back to me, especially in editing, and going like, man, that decision you told me to make, that choice was incredible. Hey, this choice you made, that was amazing. Hey, this choice that you told me to do, that was really great. He was so grateful for that he said, hey, and we were done with this movie, he said, hey, I will help you finance a film.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. Like, I'm ready. Let's go.
You had the script in hand.
Multiple scripts in hand. I'd written a few other ones.
Okay.
And actually, originally, there was a script that me and him started developing that was